things are working. This picture has nothing to do with my presentation. I was just getting your attention. So, good morning. I got away with the video last time, so I figured it was about time for me to actually talk. I will again be talking about my travels, but with a twist. I have been blessed over the last number of years to be able to travel around the world. And naturally being a Christian, there's always been a biblical purpose or connection. So what am I up to today? First, I need to ask a couple of questions. As Pastor Roy has mentioned before, there is a benefit to being in a small group. Get some feedback from you. How many of you have been to a museum of any kind in your lifetime? Most of you, good. How many of you have been to a museum with the theme of biblical history and or creation science? That's what I thought. Have any of you been to a museum other than the Ark Encounter? Yeah, that's what I thought. Maybe that's why I'm here today. I've made it a point of searching out and going to as many as possible. I have made it to 9 so far, and there are several more. I'll be showing you some pictures from a few of the same places I showed 2 years ago. But maybe by showing these pictures from all of my museums, I can do 2 things. One, if you are a homebody type and it's the Lord's will that you stay close to home and don't do much traveling, maybe I can give you a glimpse into how these ministries showcase God's creation and glory to our world in their own way, the big creation museums and the not so big ones. Second, if God is allowed you to do some traveling and are able to do some more, perhaps I can pique your interest into seeing some of these places for yourself. Pictures are never the same as in-person experience that I can give you. I can only give you the tip of the iceberg, as it were. So let's get started. I'll basically be going from smallest to largest. The smallest 2 are also the only 2 in Canada. I will start with the Bible Evidence Museum in the basement of the New Life Sanctuary Church in Winnipeg, pastored by John Feeks. It's not fancy or what you would call professionally presented, but the message of the truth of the Bible comes across in these simple displays. A few displays give reasons why science topics like geology actually support the biblical worldview and does not support long ages. This one explains what events like events like Mount St. Helens in 1980. How many of you remember that? Yeah, most of you. Events like that help explain the geology of the world in a catastrophic context. Mount St. Helens will be featured in most of the museums I mentioned today. Then there's the marvelous complexity found in living organisms, including the vast amounts of information contained in DNA. And this information has no naturalistic explanation for its origins. And the flaws in one of naturalism's favorite stories, that's the story of human evolution. And of course it explains how some of the supposed missing links, like Neanderthal man here, are just really fully human. For being such a small museum, they do have an impressive number of fossil casts and replicas, as well as several ancient inscriptions consistent with the historicity of the Bible, like this inscription found in Israel using the name of the biblical Pilate. There are more, but you'll have to visit there in person to see them. Moving on to the Big Valley Creation Museum, Creation Science Museum in Big Valley. This little museum can't compare to some of the bigger ones in the U.S., but it does get your attention and presents a good case for creation. I know these are not the best slides, pictures, but hopefully they'll give you an idea. They have several posters refuting some of the most common evolution evidences, such as the debunked embryonic recapitulation. And they show an equally valid alternate interpretation of the homology argument. which is one of the ones I was taught when I went to university. They do have several professional quality models displays like this ammonite. But what is really impressive is the number of real fossil, not casts or replicas. Like these fish, but just think of the catastrophic situation needed to get multiple excellent fish fossils. They didn't slowly settle to the bottom of some lake, like the common story is. They also have a very impressive trilobite. But this is my favorite. Again, think of the necessary conditions needed to preserve a delicate dragonfly in such pristine condition. You'd have to bury it quickly, like say in a flood. And you can't have a science museum without dinosaurs, including a fairly new discovery called Dragorex. And when you take time to read the explanations, they show the consistency of the fossil record with catastrophic worldwide flood described in the Bible. And special attention to the Grand Canyon is made and how certain features of the canyon could only have been produced in a catastrophic global flood, which I can actually verify being been there myself. The catastrophic nature of the Grand Canyon is also featured in most of the creation museums. So if you're ever headed to either Calgary or Edmonton, I invite you to check out this little museum in Big Valley. Just check the website and let them know that you are coming. They don't have the resources to stay open all the time. I will mention here that at the back there's a sheet of paper with all of the museums I'm mentioning today and the websites. So you can take that home if you're interested. But of the U.S. museums, I will start with a little privately owned exhibit in Abilene, Texas. I'll just read off their website as I show a few pictures. The Discovery Center is a creation museum that exists primarily to provide scientific and historic evidence for the truthfulness of God's Word, especially as it relates to the creation-evolution mission. Our secondary mission is to expose the myth of evolution as anti-science and atheistic in nature. We accomplish our mission by conducting tours, providing resources, teaching seminars and classes, and by sponsoring special events, as well as producing a daily radio program, a Discovery Minute. Located in Abilene, Texas, the Discovery Center is the physical headquarters of Overflow Ministries, established in 1980 by Tommy and Carolyn Walden for the purpose of teaching the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ. Unquote. The founder, Tommy Walden, died a few years ago, but a small group of volunteers are struggling to keep it open for as long as they can. Dad and I visited last spring, and we both appreciated the Miracle of Israel exhibit. Again, I'll read off the website. The Miracle of Israel exhibit is a permanent exhibit building that was erected in 2018 to honor Israel for the 70th birthday. In this self-guided tour, guests are treated to 4,000 years of Jewish history and of the importance of this little nation. Unquote. Included in the display is a full-scale replica of the Ark of the Covenant. And it's hard to see from a picture, but they have a 2,000-year-old crucifixion nails, 400-year-old Sephardic Hebrew scrolls on deerskin, and a segment on the Holocaust, of course. In another area, there is even a small fun area for the kids, featuring robots. So if you're ever in Central Texas, I would invite you to drop by and see how God can use even humble, sincere efforts to reach out to this world for His honor and glory. But just keep a close eye on any children with you. You may be leaving with a special gift. Yeah, somebody got that. Free puppy. So next we'll just move down the road a couple of hours east to the Creation Evidence Museum in Glen Rose, Texas. It's not a big museum as far as the more professional places go, but they have many simple yet effective displays covering several topics, including the marvelous complexity of living things and the concept of irreducible complexity and intelligent design. And some archaeological evidence that agrees with the biblical history, like this replica of a relief of Ramses II from Egypt, which brought back memories of when I went to Israel. This is the original. But I digress. Moving on, one of the museum's special exhibits is the human and dinosaur tracks in the same rock layer from the Paluxy River, which was found not far from the museum itself. And one of the museum's prime exhibits is this ark model. And here is a close-up video. There we go. The text surrounding this 25-foot, 1/20th scale model describes how Noah could have addressed the technical issues that taking so many animals on the ark would have entailed, such as simply fitting all the needed animals on the ark, ventilation, illumination, and of course, enough food and water for all. Some of the animals may not quite be to scale, but it is a worthy effort. And this was done before the Ark encounter in Kentucky was constructed to also address the same issues. I'll come back to the Ark encounter later. The one unique feature of this museum is the very large barometric chamber seen behind the fossil dinosaur leg bone here. This chamber replicates what Dr. Baugh, who's the founder of the museum, believes the pre-flood Earth atmosphere would have been like. They are currently raising funds to conduct long-term experiments to see the effects of higher atmospheric and oxygen pressure on plants and certain animals, such as fish. This is world-class science experimentation. So next we'll go north, move to the Glendive Dinosaur and Fossil Museum in Montana. It's a little bigger than Glenrose, with more full-size dinosaurs, like this aquatic reptile called the mosasaur, and a few other giant aquatic animals, like the turtle on the left. And of course, there's the iconic dinosaurs like the stegosaur, the triceratops, as well as the popular Tyrannosaurus rex. And as well as my favorite, the Ankylosaurus. As well as a few other smaller dinosaurs, like this juvenile duckbill dinosaur. And as always, there's a few hands-on displays for the children. Here they get to see how a bombardier beetle works. And in one corner of the upper floor, they have an artistic interpretation of the environment where one of the most complete mastodon skeletons ever found is displayed. They also have a room dedicated to the history of the Bible, and with a few ancient manuscripts, both scrolls and book versions, to help us to have confidence in the accuracy and truthfulness of our modern copies. There is a lot more, but for now, if you ever travel through Montana on your way south to the States, I invite you to stop in. I'll just mention that this museum does actual fossil digs in the area around Glendive that the public can join in. And then they do some work on this in this small workshop on the fossils found. Again, check the website for details. So now we'll move on to the last four museums. These are the biggest museums run by the bigger creation organizations in North America. The smallest of these last ones is the Discovery Center for Science and Earth History, built by the Institute for Creation Research in Dallas. When you walk in, one of the first things you see is a representation of the Garden of Eden. Notice the dinosaur over here. Yes, there were actual dinosaurs in the Garden of Eden. And as usual, example, they present a Mount St. Helens model, an explanation. They also have a display about Noah's Ark, of course, the Tower of Babel, and how ancient dragon legends are probably human encounters with dinosaurs. And they have a very large and colorful exhibit about the Grand Canyon. There are also some unique features of the book from this museum. The first, instead of signs everywhere, full of words most people don't read, they instead have these interactive monitors. Most topical exhibits had a few monitors that you could touch and go deeper into the subjects that you were interested in. You could still spend hours going through each option on all of the monitors if you wanted to, but most people aren't that interested in everything offered. So I thought it was a pretty good idea, actually. Another unique feature were these live animated portraits of famous scientists like Newton, Faraday, Pasteur, and others. These scientists had a conversation with each other, taking turns to describe how their faith in God helped them in their exploration and discoveries in the natural world. And if you couldn't guess from the name of the organization, the Institute for Creation Research, there is also public viewing and ongoing research. I won't go into it here, but this is actually research in cave fish and the loss and regain of their eyes. But the one thing that impressed me at this facility more than any other is the excuse me. Was their emphasis on the person of Jesus Christ and the gospel message. First, here in the Old Testament, with the theophanies of Christ, and here in the New Testament with modeled events of Jesus' life and ministry. And near the end, there was even a video about his second coming in authority and glory. And this is the last thing people see before exiting the galleries into the main lobby. You should be able to read that, but I'll read it anyways. For by him are all things created, that are in heaven and that are in earth, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created by him and for him. And he is before all things, and by him all things consist. Colossians 1, verses 16 and 17. Moving on. Next, I'll take you to the David Reeves Wonder Center and Science Museum in Dixon, Tennessee. This is actually the largest by square footage and the newest of the museums. Right here in the rotunda, there is a 55-foot-long Camarasaurus. It has the usual science exhibits, fossil skeletons, dinosaur models, exquisite fossils like this horseshoe crab, and a display about Mount St. Helens. And there's plenty of interactive activities for the kids. And there are many other tastefully displayed exhibits too. But a couple of things here did impress me. One was the variety of subjects covered. You can't read these, but just down there's one wing, Science Here, covers the wonders of zoology, biology, the Ice Age, and human anatomy. Plus, on this side, there's production studios for the creation of teaching DVDs and other media. Creation of media? See what I did there? Never mind. A couple of you got it. The other thing was the potential for expansion. There is plenty of room for different and even more displays. And even when I was there last year, you can see there is already plans for much more coming soon. But I will end this museum with the most unique feature that I found. These are 1 million volt Tesla coils. They have them set up to produce music. The sounds you hear are from the electricity in the air. I won't explain the physics, but just enjoy. I hope this works.
3, 2, 1.
Wouldn't you want to experience that in person? Yeah, just think of being in the same room with all that power. But we'll move on. Now we'll move on to the Creation Museum constructed by Answers in Genesis. This I have shown pictures from this museum before, so I'll move fairly quickly. It is a regular museum with dinosaurs and everything else, but this time I'll show it just a little bit differently. If you know anything about Answers in Genesis, then you will be familiar with what they call the 7 C's of history. The main history of the Bible can be explained by following these themes. There's creation, of course, corruption, which is the fall, catastrophe, which is the flood, confusion at Babel, Christ, his sacrifice on the cross, and the consummation of all things in the future. So it begins with creation in the Garden of Eden. They put a lot of effort into their version of the original paradise. Next is the fall of mankind and corruption, which includes the first blood sacrifice to cover humanity's sins. Then we have the global catastrophe in Noah's flood, which is primarily what the Ark encounter is all about, which I'll come to in a minute. And the global flood is basically what is responsible for the geologic evidence in the rock layers we have today. Then there's the confusion and dispersion of people groups at the Tower of Babel, which again can explain a number of things we see in our world today, including the so-called races. And then, of course, they do mention Christ, his sacrifice on the cross, and a return to consummation of all things. So yeah, even AIG includes a return of Christ and consummation of biblical prophecy. So now we'll move on to the last center I will mention, which is the famous Ark encounter. Again, I did spend some time on this 2 years ago, so be a little bit quicker. Even though I've been to it twice now, the second time was with my dad about a year ago. Answers in Genesis is continuing to develop what can only be described as a theme park. Again, you can check out the website if you want to know more. But I won't spend any time on the whole complex, just the Ark itself. The Ark itself is really an impressive structure. And it gives you a probably somewhat realistic feel of the atmosphere of the original Ark. And they did do their research in how many animals and animal kinds would have been needed saving on the Ark, and the space and resources needed for all of the animals as well, and people. They have multiple cages with animals, including dinosaurs, and even other extinct life forms that we don't see today. We only know from the fossil record. It is divided into 3 decks, just like the biblical Ark. and the whole thing is full of information signs and displays. So you truly cannot get a sense of scale and size from pictures. So I do have a video here. This is only one side of one level. The Ark Encounter is by far the busiest, most crowded, and loudest of the museums I've been to. But you might like that sort of thing. So if you're ever in Kentucky, I encourage you to stop by. So I have been asked if I had to recommend one of the creation museums that I've been to. If you ever, next time you travel to the U.S., if I had to recommend one, it would be the ICR Discovery Center in Dallas. It is the most professionally done with world-class science exhibits without losing sight of the true purpose of biblical creation and creation evangelism. So why do I do it? It's not easy or cheap to travel these days. To help explain why I do these things, I will conclude here with 2 Bible verses. These museums showcase God's created world, and as the Bible says, for from the creation of the world, the invisible things of Him are clearly seen, being understood through the things that are made, even His eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Romans 1, verse 20. I believe the concept of evolution has corrupted how people see the physical world, and it allows them to look at the world without seeing Him in the verse, that is God, the God of creation, and His offer and plan of redemption. Also, we need to know why we believe what we believe. But in your hearts regard Christ as Lord, as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you a reason for the hope that is in you, yet do it with gentleness and respect. 1 Peter 3:15. We can all basically explain what we believe, but so can most other people. What is lacking in today's world is a rational, logical, defensible reason why we believe as we do. Seeing these places helps me know that the Bible is true, and there are good reasons to believe so. So that's all I have for today. Thank you.